I'm Michelle Williams Gamaker. I live in London, work in London. I am an artist who works with moving image. Most of my films are made for the gallery, but they also work in cinema spaces. I think that my work is very much about diving into the cinema that I experienced as a child, as a teenager, and it's trying to kind of work through the sometimes complicated histories that sit within those films, and I suppose it's about reimagining and reliving some of those encounters with cinema. Audiences, I hope, are going to experience a real immersion into a fantastical cinematic world. There's 3 films in the show, and I hope that you can feel the atmosphere coming from the screen. So there's a lot of film props, there's costumes, there's print works, there's incredible seating that I hope that the audience will be able to kind of enjoy almost as a sculptural experience too. Across galleries 1, 2 and 3, you will encounter the Bang Straws, the Thieves and the Eternal Return, which are all works that I've made from 2019 to 2023. So I suppose the centrepiece of Our Mountains Are Painted on Glass is Thieves, which is a co-commission between DCA and South London Gallery. In many ways, this is my first foray into what I'm calling fictional revenge. To me, fictional revenge is, I suppose, a shift from what I was making before, which I called a whole body of work fictional activism, where my marginalised film stars really start to kind of articulate some of the conditions they find themselves in. So in general, they kind of are seen within the casting space in House of Women, and then the Bang Straws, I recreate the kind of structural violence that you might find within casting. Whereas for fictional revenge, I felt that this was a moment for the talk to be over and for maybe a more direct action mode to take place. And for me, that also was about thinking about the kind of hidden labour within a film set, so the set workers, the cast and how they're treated. In Gallery 2, you'll see 5 vitrines, and they're very dear to me because I think since 2015 I've been collecting film ephemera, specifically related to the film star Sabu, but that has started to grow as my kind of band of brown protagonists grow. So I'm also collecting ephemera connected to Anna May Wong as well. So Sabu was born in 1924, and as the story goes, because I can't be 100% sure, he was found by the, I say that in quotes, he was found by the anthropologist Robert Flaherty in the stables of the Maharaja of Mysore. So he was very young when he performed in the 1937 Sultan Korda film Elephant Boy, and it kind of catapults him to fame because that film won the Venice Film Festival, and Alexander Korda, who was a famous film producer, took Sabu to the UK. He had to learn English for the role of Tumai in Elephant Boy, and really that's the start of his filmmaking journey, which then takes him to Hollywood. Anna May Wong was born in 1905. I believe she was born in LA. She was first generation Chinese American, and it's an amazing story, but she was so surrounded by Hollywood. You could imagine that she would pester film crews, really asking whether she could be on set, if she could be in the movies. She would skip school to do that, and she even got a nickname called CCC, which was something like Curious Chinese Child, which problematic, but also it was clear that she was noted for being around the movies so much. Her father quite disapproved of that, but sure enough, she had to perform. She's a born performer. Amazingly, there's a lot of ephemera out there which really starts to track, I suppose, the backstory of Sabu, like the things that he did or how he was marketed. And it really helps me to write my characters with a bit more depth. So those film ephemera help me to kind of better understand how Sabu navigated the system. But then you'll also see things like teapots, crockery with his image, lovely shredded wheat, adverts. And then you just start to see just how much he was sold and marketed. It was quite a global phenomenon. And as a result, in a way, I started to collect the ephemera almost to try to kind of reconstitute or consolidate this really distributed image. You'll see that some of my films are shot on 16mm and some of them are shot digitally. And each film is always a kind of conversation. What medium do we want to work in this time? Working in 16mm, you have to make a commitment and you have to be really careful, but you also get an incredible texture, and it sometimes makes me think that I'm touching some of that kind of visual texture that you get from the source films. But then something like Thieves, which is shot digitally, we work with really specific lenses to try to push it back in time and to think what a colour grade, which is almost like the makeup that you get to kind of finish off the film, that's a kind of moment of like, how do we also bring back some of the kind of 1940s through its coloration. In the bang straws, you'll see De Hong Wang lying on the floor, and in the 1937 film of The Good Earth, they created a locust swarm with tea leaves moving in water that was then superimposed on the landscape. So for the bang straws, I did a similar thing. We created a tank with tea leaves, filmed that separately and then superimposed that in the film studio. So when De Hong is on the floor batting away a swarm, it's tea leaves that are moving. And for me, that's cinema magic. Collaboration basically is at the heart of my making, partly because if you're a filmmaker, of course you could do it solo, but at the scale that I'm now working, that would be absolutely impossible. So from script to post-production, there are a number of collaborators that I'm working with along the way. Through the show, you're going to see a number of performers who are repeat performers in that they get cast in different characters. So I've been working with Krishna Ista since 2014 and De Hong Wang since 2020. One of the incredible things about working at DCA has been collaborating with the DCA print studio. As you enter the exhibition, you'll see a very large film poster for Thieves, which kind of welcomes you into the show, I suppose, sets you up for this cinematic experience that you're about to receive. And also we worked on the most incredibly tiny cigarette cards. These were informed by my collection of cigarette cards of film stars. Finally, there's a screen print of an image of a set photograph by Ellen Jane Rogers of a character called the Silver Maiden, and overlaid is a makeup palette from theatrical grease paint that basically it's the source of what we're looking at in Thieves, which is white actors using racist makeup, what was known as either yellow face or brown face or black face, to paint themselves to perform as performers of colour. So what's going on there is, by overlaying that and revealing some of the names of those colours, I think we start to see some of the kind of complex politics around film production of that era. So running through the exhibition, you will notice shredded paper, which for me symbolises shredded script. This idea that a script could be torn apart or ripped or eroded is really important, and you'll see that edging the props, and you'll also be able to sit on shredded cinema posters, and this idea that everything is actually dissolving and the system as we know it has a chance to kind of crumble and be rebuilt. That's something that feels like magic to me, that we could do that and rewrite something more hopeful. One thing I've been trying to understand is this concept of critical affection. What I mean by that is I love these directors so very much, but I'm also aware that within their films there are things that need addressing, and it's not just Powell and Pressburger, it's a much wider conversation around film history. But why I'm drawn to these directors is first for their formal invention and also for their innovation cinematically. And I think that they're not actually, they're very British films and they're very un-British. And I think that's the specific duo of Powell being quintessentially British, Emmerich Pressburger being a Hungarian emigre. He fled Nazi Germany. What I think he brings to the dynamic is something of migrant power and agency. And you'll see that characters are not just about a mainstream. There are many marginal figures in Powell and Pressburger, and I think that's why I like to work with something of their body of work, because I know that condition, I know that space. So critical affection for me now is about robustly deconstructing and critiquing something, but doing it with love and doing it with the hope that that critique will leave us in a place of greater understanding and love and joy.